For those of you who have known me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about something I term the rhythm of the soul, or soul rhythms. While the fullness of this is much more than I could cover in a few minutes, I'd like to share the basic concept of it for today's midweek devotion, because it's been so life-giving to me. In Revelation 3:20, John quotes Jesus as saying, "Look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in, and we will share a meal together as friends." The rhythm of the soul has helped me to come to experience that knocking as closely and consistently as the beating of my own heart. It begins with a story. More than 20 years ago, I was in a real place of struggle in my faith. The vibrance and sense of intimacy I had known with God had escaped me. Of course, I still knew and loved God, but I felt distance in the sense of connection I had come to know. If our walk with God was like a bullseye, I felt like I was way off center, missing the mark even. About that time, I'd scheduled a few days at a retreat center and had the opportunity to walk a prayer labyrinth for the first time. A prayer labyrinth is a circular walking path that looks kind of like a maze, but does not have any dead ends. Ancient Christians placed labyrinths in many of the cathedrals during the Crusades to symbolize their tradition of making pilgrimages to the holy city, Jerusalem. And today, the prayer labyrinth is an invitation to the heart of our faith, step by step, weaving in and out of its concentric rings to the center and then back out again. Interestingly, a prayer labyrinth kind of looks a little like a bullseye with its concentric circles. And as you begin your walk, you very quickly find yourself in one of the rings nearest to the center. As I walked this prayer labyrinth this first time, I remember reflecting on my own journey of faith over the years. And then at one moment, I was stopped in my tracks. I was on the farthest ring from the center and suddenly felt a deep pit in my stomach. This place was a physical representation of exactly where I felt in my faith with God, at least the way I was perceiving it. I felt distant and disconnected. I stood there a long time, thinking and praying about how I could get back to the center. After a while, my mind paused for a split second, trying to figure out how to fix the situation I was in. And in that pause came a thought with a still small voice that unexpectedly changed everything. I could tell this thought was not my own. It was God trying to break through. And it simply said, "Jim, I love you where you are." My thinking and praying shifted, and I answered back, "But where I am is not good enough. How do I get back to the center, back to connection with you?" The still small voice seemed to reply, "It's not about doing something to get back to the center. It's about trusting I'm right here. Then and only then in that trust can we make the next single step together, Jim. The heart of God is not the center of the labyrinth, it's the whole path of life. And trusting our connection and my leading along the way with all of its twists and turns." It was a life-changing moment for me. I had been seeing my faith as a quest to God instead of a journey with God. That no matter what I'm feeling or experiencing in the moment, and even in my faith, it does not define God's closeness to me. God is always with me. God is always with us. That is a reality that can never change. My perspective of the rhythm of the soul came in the years following as I paid closer attention to my daily experience of faith as well as of those I was in ministry with. I recognized that our sense of connection with God often changes based on the circumstances and reality of life in any given moment. I began to call those soul rhythms. And through my continued reading of Scripture and ministry with others, began to recognize some common ways that God meets us in those rhythms. My hope is to write a book about this someday, but for today, I want to encourage you that God, through Christ, walks with you in every moment, and factual closeness to God is never in question, even when we feel distance. because God is always close to us, as close as our own heartbeat, gently knocking on the doorway of our soul, inviting us to eat together as friends.